It is 4 p.m. We're bringing developing news to the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon or the Story Conference. I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories we're watching this Thursday, February 20. Secretary Cesar Chavez has resigned as Presidential Communications Office Secretary. He cited falling short of expectations but remains a supporter of the Marcos administration. Former journalist Jay Ruiz will replace him as PCO chief, becoming the fourth to hold the position under the Marcos administration. Congressman Pantelon Alvarez files a motion to suspend House Speaker Martin Romualdez and other lawmakers. This stems from the alleged 241 billion pesos worth of insertions in the 2025 budget, which Alvarez claims were not approved in the BICAM report. For his part, House Majority Leader Congressman Manix Delipe calls it a blatant political ploy to distract from the impeachment proceedings against VP Sara Duterte. And the Vatican says Pope Francis's condition is stable on a 6-day in Gemelli Hospital after a double pneumonia diagnosis. Blood tests are showing slight improvement, and the Pontiff remains alert while working with staff. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also visited the Pope and said he is, and we quote, his usual joking self. And joining us today, busy-busy sa kanyang cellphone at meron namang kinukulit siguro, ang ating President Political Pundit, si Tito Ronald Llamas.
Magandang hapon, Ed. No? Ano bang suot ni Ami ngayon?
Yan, pink daw eh.
Tingnan mo,
tama ba?
Parang estudyante parang nasa elementary ang attire mo.
From the Philippine Star, we have Editor-in-Chief. Ang bossing na mga taga-Paranaque, si Miss Ami Paintuan. May ribbon pa.
Hi, happy Thursday.
Diba?
May ribbon. Oo nga eh.
Girl na girl.
Mabait si Ronald. Yung iba sabi mukha akong teacher.
Girl na girl.
Mabait siya, estudyante.
Natuwa siya.
Mas magaling ng bola yung isa.
Mukha estudyante. Girl na girl eh.
Palibasa, Tito Ronald, mukhang principal. o rector.
Lagi akong pinapatawag ng principal.
Laging pinatatawag ng principal.
Pero yung ating guest ngayon, hindi pinapatawag ng principal yan.
Oo. At ipatawag natin.
Yes.
Okay. Ipasok natin si former Senate President Franklin Drilon. Sir, magandang hapon and welcome back to the Story Conference.
Magandang hapon, SP.
Magandang hapon po. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. Good to have you, sir. Mukhang masaya kahapon ng inyong discussion, inyong panel discussion doon sa
UP Law.
Sa UP Law, doon sa issues about impeachment. Well, there was a bit of hindi naman siguro heated, more of a spirited discussion. Among other issues, if I may, sir, there was a discussion as to whether or not, or how much power the Supreme Court has in intervening when it comes to the impeachment process. Sir, we're not lawyers, sir, so we'll have to leave it to you to decipher for us. Pero, sir, from your point of view, I understand, from your point of view, hindi maaari nang makialam ang Korte Suprema pag napasok na sa Kongreso at Senado ang impeachment.
Tama po yan dahil sa ating saligang batas, ang Senado has the sole power to hear and decide impeachment cases. Sa prinsipyo po ng separation of powers ay hindi dapat makialam ang Korte Suprema doon po sa trial ng impeachment dahil po ang sasaligang batas yan po ay sole prerogative ng Senado.
Pero sir, if I may, sir, kasi there appears to be some precedent here kasi I think it was 2011, panahon ni Pinoy, dun sa kaso ni Mercy Gutierrez when she was being impeached. The Supreme Court was petitioned to intervene by Mercy Gutierrez, and the Supreme Court did step in, although in favor of Congress. Pero po, nagdesisyon ng Korte Suprema na, I think in that case, ang sabi ng Korte Suprema, walang violation doon sa 1-year ban ng initiation ng impeachment process versus Mercy Gutierrez. And I think doon among other places na established na kailangan ka munang umabot doon sa Justice Committee yung impeachment complaint for it to be called initiated.
Pero di ba technically hindi naman talaga intervention 'yon ng Supreme Court?
Hindi ko alam. Hindi ako bagado. Pero sir, how should we view all these things? For example, may 2011 decision.
I'm sorry, but you're garbled. I cannot hear you very well. The issue of Gutierrez
Yes, sir.
became academic dahil lang po nag-resign siya at hindi na binuo yung impeachment court.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm referring to GR 193459 where the Supreme Court in 2011 ruled na hindi na violate ng Kongreso yung
Ang
one-year
one-year
ban versus the initiation of impeachment complaint.
Sa akin po, ang jurisdiction sa impeachment trial ay ang impeachment court. At yun pong proseso, kagaya ng mga question on whether or not a one-year rule is violated. Sa akin po, dapat ang impeachment court ang magdedesisyon yan. Dahilan po, hindi naman ang sinasabi natin, ang impeachment court ay isang sui generis. One of its kind.
Yeah.
Hindi po ordinaryong ahensya ito at ito po yung Senado na binuo bilang impeachment court. Kaya sa akin, on the principle of separation of powers, dapat hindi papasukan ng Korte Suprema yung mga bagay tungkol sa impeachment trial.
Senator, you're talking about the rules. Rules siya ng impeachment na siguro papasok dito sa final ni Vice President Duterte doon sa fourth impeachment complaint against her. Pero meron ding may isa pang petition sa Supreme Court na gustong ipa-define yung constitutional provision na kailangan mag-trial forthwith. Yung sa ganun ba, pwede bang pumasok ang Supreme Court just to interpret the meaning, yung constitutional sense ng Constitution sa pagkakalagay na yon ng forthwith? Pwede ba nilang pasukan yon? Hindi nila pwedeng utusan, you're saying na hindi nila pwedeng utusan yung Senate na ituloy nyo yan o ganito-ganito, pero can they interpret that? Kasi constitutional issue, di ba? Yan yung pinag-uusapan. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng forthwith?
Kaya Ami, kitang-kita natin na maraming tanong na walang sagot dahilan sa circumstansya na inihain yung articles of impeachment on the last day of the session. Kaya sa akin po, ang solusyon lahat dito ay tumawag na ng Pangulo ng special session para mabuo yung impeachment court at pagkaroon na ng trial and forthwith, sabi nga ng Siligang Batas, to try the case forthwith. Ang problema ngayon, wala pong impeachment court dahil hindi tumatawag ng special session ang Pangulo at dahil walang session, walang impeachment court. Kaya po, maraming mga iba't ibang opinion tungkol dito because maraming mga circumstansya na ngayon lang natin makikita dahilan sa recess ang Kongreso at walang session.
SP Drilon, kahapon dun sa UP Law forum nyo, parang united naman kayo na ang ibig sabihin ng forthwith is
immediately.
Immediately. Pero may qualification si Teddy Te at saka si Ombudsman Carpio Morales. Nang sabi nila na yung recess is a reasonable delay. No? Baka pwede niyo ipaliwanag yung perspective niyo diyan.
Alam nyo, sa batas kami mga abogado, tinuturuan sa law school, give the words its ordinary meaning. Ang meaning ng forthright, ibig sabihin kaagad pag you immediately hear the case. Forthwith. You immediately hear the case. Wala pong exception na nakalagay sa batas except that that the impeachment court could not be constituted because walang session. Kaya po yung solution sa aking tingin, tumawag ng special session para itong lahat ng mga tanong na mahirap sagutin dahilan sa iba't ibang interpretasyon ay magiging academic na po. Yan po ay tungkulin ng ating Pangulo at ng ating Senado na buuhin ang impeachment court for immediately.
At consistent doon sa sinabi nyo kanina, SP, yung sui generis, na itong mga consistent sa sinabi nyo, SP, doon sa sui generis, na itong impeachment is unique, no? One of its kind, which means na yung usual schedules ng Senado, like recess, doesn't apply. Dahil nga iba ito eh. No, hindi ito yung usual legislative process.
That's correct po. Kaya pag pagtawag ng special session, ang una pong item sa agenda ay ang impeachment, articles of impeachment na hinain ng House of Representatives.
Sir, sir, if you don't mind, sir, let me give you a hypothetical.
Dahil siya nawala.
Kasi kami mga ordinary non-lawyers, ang tingin namin sa Korte Suprema is the final arbiter. I suppose even the lawyers look at it that way. But what if the Supreme Court intervenes in a case or a petition involving the impeachment process? What if the Supreme Court intervenes? Who gets the last say? And who will decide?
Like what intervention?
Kaya nga, may mga reglamento tayo, Ed, na mayroong prinsipyong separation of powers. Kasi theoretically, pag hindi sununod ng Senado, ang utos ng Korte Suprema,
Opo.
yun po ba pwede mong i-contempt ang buong Senado, ang wala na 24 na senador? Kaya po may prinsipyo, you exercise judicial restraint by refusing to take cognizance of kasong mga ganito under the principle of separation of powers dahil magkapantay po ang Senado at saka ang Korte Suprema.
Senator, ang sabi ng Malacanang, magtatawag daw si President Marcos ng special session pag hiningi ng mga senador. Ang sabi naman ng mga senador, it's up to the Senate President daw kung magtatawag ng special session. Kayo, you being a former Senate President, ano po yung tingin niya doon? Talaga bang it's really just up to the Senate President dahil ayaw niya?
Lahat po yan ay hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit maraming theory. Simple lang po, ang Pangulo ng ating bansa ay siya lamang po ang makakadetermine kung tatawag ng special session. Hindi po kailangan na hilingin ng mga senador.
Yes.
Hindi kailangan na any other circumstance. The power to call the special session is the sole prerogative of the President. And to me, he can even say, tatawag ako ng special session in order that the Senate can perform its constitutional duty to constitute itself into an impeachment court immediately. Wala pong illegal doon. Dahilan ang kapangyarihan ng Pangulo to call a special session is absolute. Hindi po kailangan na hilingin ng Senado ang special session.
At sa ating
absolute po, kasi yung isang opinion, pwede lang daw yan kung legislation. Iba daw yung impeachment. Kapag doon daw sa he can call a special session for a legislative act, saka lang magkakaroon ng impeachment court. Yun naman yung isa pa ring opinion. What do you think of that?
Di ba Senate President walang qualification?
Ang pagpapalit ng pangalan ng isang kalsada ay legislative matter. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng tumawag ng special session dahil ibig palitan ang pangalan ng kalsada, ngunit hindi pwedeng tumawag ng special session in order to constitute an impeachment court. Wala po sa akin yan. Wala po sa saligang batas na limit ang kapangyarihan ng Pangulo to call a special session. Wala pong nakalagay, basta the President can call a special session at any time nakalagay. Walang
Qualification.
limitasyon kung ano ang dapat talakayin sa special session.
Walang qualification, SP. Diba? Walang qualification sa Constitution.
Walang qualification.
Sir, if I may, one more hypothetical. Sorry, pero puro ako hypothetical kasi hindi kami abogado. Pero one more hypothetical, sir. Is it possible na, because nga only the Senate has the sole prerogative to convict or to acquit an official on impeachment charges? I mean, I think that's a given naman eh. Everybody agrees with that. But is it possible that the Supreme Court could have authority as far as the procedure or the processes involved in the impeachment or the constitutional issues with regard to the process of impeachment, but not on the vote itself? Meaning, in the end, it still is going to be the senator or judges who will decide on guilt or innocence, but that the Supreme Court could have some prerogative or some leeway with regard to procedural matters?
Like what?
Yeah, for example nga, the Merceditas Gutierrez issue on whether or not may violation ng 1-year ban on initiation.
Ed, ang rules kay Gutierrez, ang interpret ng Supreme Court, yung 1-year period kung kailan mag-uumpisa.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Hindi po yung bagay na mga dapat tatalakayin sa impeachment complaint. So, hindi po applicable yan in the case of whether or not the President can call a special session. Iba po yan. Ito, nandun na sa Senado at ang issue kailangan ba mag-convene na as an impeachment court? Hindi po makakonvene as an impeachment court dahil sa walang session ang Kongreso. At ang solution po, pag-usapan natin ang solution, sa aking tingin, ay dapat magkaroon ng special session.
Yes, sir.
Para lahat itong tanong na ito ay maging academic lang.
SP, sabi ni Senate President Chis Escudero, ang kanyang basihan sa pagpapatawag ay public clamor. Yung ba ang issue rito, public clamor, o talagang trabaho ng Senate President na mag-convene? No? Kailangan bang hintayin yung public clamor muna?
Sa akin po, with all due respect to my friend Chis, wala pong kailangan na public clamor. Titingnan lang natin ang ating saligang batas. At sa ating saligang batas, wala pong limitasyon ang kapangyarihan ng Pangulo na tumawag ng special session. At pag nagtawag ng special session, obligatory po na i-calendar yung impeachment complaint.
Sir, may pahabol pa ako.
Di ba akong...
Ami, go ahead. Sige. Go ahead. Ami, ikaw muna.
Hindi, gusto ko mag-change topic.
Ay, teka.
Sige, tapusin mo muna impeachment.
Yung call muna, yung pahabol mo.
Sir, ito sir. So in effect, Bali, sir, what you're saying is that all these petitions filed with the Supreme Court with regard to impeachment are being filed with the wrong venue because the Supreme Court should not have already any more jurisdiction over these issues. Because gumulong ng impeachment na-impeaching yung isang tao, and therefore it has to move forward now without intervention from the Supreme Court. If that is correct, sir, then what happens if the Supreme Court does take cognizance and does take steps over these petitions? Like it already asked the Senate to file its comment within 10 days dun sa petition for the Senate to be forced or to be made to convene already immediately.
Well, yung filing po ng comment, yan po ay matter of course na hinihingi ng husgado. It doesn't touch on the merits of the case. It just it's not a decision on the merits of the case or the lack of merit. It is just a procedural matter that a comment is requested of the other party when the petition is filed. So wala pong epekto yan.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, yun nga, what if it moves forward? What if the Supreme Court eventually, in the next few, after the comments are filed, what if the Supreme Court calls for oral hearings, oral debates, and then makes a ruling? Where does that put us na?
Well, calling an oral argument again is not a decision on the case. It's just to help the court determine what should be done correctly.
is not yet intervention.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Senator,
It's
related
not an
dyan.
intervention. Hindi intervention po yan. Hindi ibig the pina-comment at nag-set ng order that the Supreme Court has decided to decide on the case. Hindi po yan ang sitwasyon. And the fact that the case is that comment is required or that an oral argument is called does not in any way affect the issue of whether or not the court has jurisdiction to entertain the petition.
Okay,
Kasi related dyan, Senator, yung itatanong ko eh. Kasi nag-set na rin siya ng oral arguments on the petitions questioning the constitutionality of the 2025 General Appropriations Act sa April. Saka yung mga petitions involving the Maharlika Investment Fund. So, ang tanong ko, pareho nung kay Ed nga, the Supreme Court has taken cognizance. Paano kung magdesisyon na in favor of the petitioners sa GAA na muna, dun sa budget na muna? Anong mangyayari dun sa budget kapag dineclare na unconstitutional ng Supreme Court?
Well,
Anong mangyayari sa atin?
Kung ma-declare unconstitutional yung 2025 General Appropriations Act, ang ibig lang sabihin, ang 2024 General Appropriations Act ay maging effective ulit dahil sa yung nakalagay po yan sa ating salig batas. Ang failure to pass a budget will mean that the previous year's budget is reenacted. Yun po sa specific sa ating batas, saligang batas. At kung sakali man, sasabihin ng Korte Suprema, ng 2025 General Appropriations Act ay invalid dahil sa hindi sinunod ang saligang batas, yung 2024 General Appropriations Act ang magiging manatili at siyang ang basihan ng paggastos ng pera ng taong bayan.
Di ba sobrang gulo nun? Kasi, syempre, nagamit na yun sa ibang project na implemented na in 2024.
Saka isang kwarto
Ang
na naman.
matitira na lang
Tama
dyan,
po yan. Kaya
yung ang description savings na lang.
Hindi.
Reenactment is disadvantageous to the economy kasi yung nagamit mong item na of authorization, ang proyekto na nagawa na, hindi mo pwedeng lagyan muli ng pera dahil nagawa na.
Yes.
Kaya yan po ang limitation dun po sa reenacted budget. The projects and activities which were already implemented can no longer be implemented again kasi naggastos na ang appropriation doon.
Saka walang pondo yung bagong project, di ba? The new projects na ang appropriation is under the 2025 GAA, they cannot get moving dahil walang pondo. Ganun ba yan?
Kung ba-declare na invalid yung 2025 budget, yung General Appropriations Act, yung mga project and activities na dapat punduhan doon po sa 2025 ay hindi na po pwedeng punduhan yan kasi invalid yung appropriation.
Kaya, Senate President, ang lalakas dyan ay yung role ng Presidente sa reenacted budget. Yung kanyang discretionary powers ay lalakas. Kaya very powerful ang Presidente sa isang reenacted budget.
Tama po yan. At I can tell you from my personal experience, nung ako po'y Pangulo ng Senado, nangyari na, pinakiusapan ako na huwag mo nang ipasa ang budget para magkakaroon ng reenacted budget.
Ay, teka.
Several times yata nangyari yan.
Ako, I am testifying on my own personal knowledge dahil akong sinabihan.
Ang daming,
Sir,
ang daming,
anong taon yan, sir? Anong taon
ang daming-
yan?
Pero natuloy, di ba?
ang daming
Talagang
reenacted.
nagkaroon ng reenacted budget several times. Nagkaroon ng reenacted budget.
Panahon ni GMA,
Nagkaroon
marami.
ng reenacted budget.
Panahon ni GMA, marami yan.
Kaya nga eh. Wala nang
Look at that
remedyo yan.
smile.
Paano na yun? That's an entire year na wala kang budget.
Hindi naman,
Di ba pwedeng gagawa ng bago?
Pero hindi po maganda yan dahil sa ang latitude or ang discretion ng presidente
Malawak.
ay masyadong malawak sa isang reenacted budget. Dahil lahat na pundo na dapat gastusin doon sa mga bagong proyekto at sa mga proyektong dapat punduhan, ay hindi po mapupunduhan. At marami pong open close quote savings. The discretion
Yes, yun na
of
nga.
the President becomes absolute. So, hindi po maganda. At sa ating ekonomiya, hindi maganda po magkaroon ng reenacted budget dahil 25% ng ating ekonomiya ay funded by public spending.
Public spending.
Kung po budget, walang authority to spend. Yun ang problema. Except for salaries, for example, more recurring expenses. So, hindi po talaga maganda na hindi magkaroon ng budget for the current year.
Practically, Senate President, yung power of the purse ng Congress will shift dramatically towards the
Executive.
President, the Chief Executive.
I agree. I agree po. Tama po yan. It will shift to the total or in very substantial portion to the President.
So am I getting this
So,
right
anong-
na the President has more to
Ano
gain
pwedeng remedyo dyan sa ano? Yun na nga, dahil namanggal nga yung National Expenditure Program at kung saan-saan napunta yung ano, mas malaki yung DPWH, education. Anong pwedeng remedyo without a reenactment of the budget?
Hindi ko po napag-aralan yan namin. Hindi ko kita masagot. Pero ang alam ko lang, reenacted budget, yung mga sweldo, for example,
Yes.
yan ay pwede mong punduhan. Ngunit yung mga proyektong bago ay hindi mo pwedeng
Wala
punduhan.
po.
So, yung mga proyekto na kailangan dagdag by dagdag na appropriation dahil kulang, hindi mo pwedeng dagdagan. Kaya malaking dagok po, malaking disadvantage sa ating economic situation pag nagkaroon ng reenacted budget.
Pero di ba SP, isa sanang solusyon o at least mitigation ng weaknesses ng GAA, ng budget, ay bago magdeklara yung Supreme Court ng whatever, alimbawa, yung possibility na i-declare siya unconstitutional, yung isang pwedeng gawin ng Presidente ay supplemental budget.
Yung supplemental, hindi pwedeng gawin ng Presidente yun. Yung supplemental budget
No, I mean,
ay dapat
Congress.
ipasalit sa
Yes.
Kongreso yun.
Yes.
Congress.
Pero pwede niyang magbigay siya ng practical, tawag ba dyan? Incentives para gawin ng Kongreso. Gamitin niya yung kanyang power para kumbinsin ang Kongreso na gawin.
Alam mo, hindi po pwede yan. Dahil hanggang hindi ba declare na unconstitutional yung kasalukuyang budget, ay yan po ang governing statute. Hindi mo po pwedeng palitan yan. Ngayon, kahit po mag-supplemental budget ka, hindi pa effective pa yung budget mo for the current year. Hindi po pwedeng mag-supplemental ka. Anong i-supplement natin? Dahil mayroon pa namang appropriation, mayroon pang valid General Appropriations Act until declared otherwise by the Supreme Court.
Halimbawa, SP, kahit yung 12 billion na nawala sa DepEd, hindi pwedeng i-supplemental yon, no?
Ay, kung tutusin, pwede mo i-supplemental. Total, pwede mong gawin yung supplemental kasi technically, the releases of the funds is within the control of the President. It is the authorization na nasa Kongreso lang.
Sir, am I getting this right na in the event na mag-reenact tayo ng budget o let's call it a budget failure, enacted budget, the incumbent president would have more to gain in terms of political and financial power because of a enacted budget?
The president certainly has a wider leeway sa reenacted budget. Walang question dun.
Okay. Something to think about, no? Okay, sir. Maraming salamat, sir.
Maraming salamat, SP.
Okay.
Always a
Thank you,
pleasure
Thank
having
you,
you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Former Senate President Franklin Dillon. Tito Ronald, very interesting discussion, ha?
Kaya,
May ganun pa lang.
kaya nga nung panahon ni GMA, ang daming re-enacted budget eh.
Almost every year.
Diba, Ami? Dahil
Almost every year.
lahat sila manlilimos.
Saka magaling silang mag-handle nung pag-release.
Oo. Tsaka lahat,
Pag-release ng budget, that's very important. That's an executive action. Kahit ayaw mo yung pinasahan ng Kongreso, huwag mong i-release. In fact, yan na lang ang sinasuggest nila ngayon. Huwag nyo nang galawin yan kasi pinirma na yung GAA. Kontrolin nyo na lang yung release. Para hindi maabuso yung para sa eleksyon. Yun na lang ang yun ang sinasabi ng iba.
at sa
Use your
re-enacted,
executive power. Kung talagang ayaw niya yung pinasa.
sa re-enacted budget, manlilimos sila sa presidente.
Ngayon, medyo pahirapan din yung release pero mas malala kung reenacted.
Okay, Bok, let's go into a gap, and then when we come back, we will have Professor Ranjit Rai from OCTA Research to talk to us about the latest
OCTA
research.
survey.
So just stay with us. We'll take a break. We've got the open news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to Storycon or the Story Conference. I'm Ed Lingao, and still with us, aming pamintuan ng Philippine SAR, Tito Raul Llamas, ang posibleng maging Dean of Cardinals.
Yung pinag-uusapan namin kanina, Ami, yung
hindi yan.
yung Vatican paano pag nagka-problema, di ba?
All the worrisome news coming from the Vatican over the health of Pope Francis. So, kung sakaling...
Kaya may prayer, may call
may
for
mga
prayer.
videos eh.
Cardinal Advincula.
Baka kailanganin kami ni
Holy Hour for the healing of Pope Francis on February 21. Sa Manila Cathedral, baka daw gusto niyong sumali.
Baka kailanganin kami ni Prof. Ranjit Rai. Baka kailanganin kami para sa kampanya doon, para sa bagong Papa. Dahil kailangan ng data analytics eh. Kailangan ng data analytics,
Services,
numbers crunching. Diyan, Tapos
Kailangan nyo kailangan nyo na mag-register sa Comelec. Requirement siya, Requirement na yan.
Magandang testing.
Must register with the Comelec.
Dahil kung graduate ka ng politika sa Pilipinas, pwede ka sa Vatican.
Dahil makasalanan ka.
Dahil
kailangan nila mga seniors.
That's a 2,000-year-old institution. Hindi naman niya magso-survive nang hindi ganyan ka-intense ang politika dyan. Di ba, Prof?
Tama, Prof.
Pero one thing sa Vatican, maayos ang election dyan. Wala masyadong question.
Transparent.
Few times over the last 3 centuries.
Pero Prof, may dagdag bawas din dyan dahil dinadagdagan mo yung conclave, yung boboto.
May padding na.
May padding.
Both padding.
Anong tawag doon? When you try to increase the population of a geographic area, may tawag doon.
Redistricting.
Hindi lang yun. I forget the name of that.
Gerrymandering, pinaghihiwa-hiwalay.
Pinaghihiwa-hiwalay. Pero
pinaghihiwa-hiwalay.
Diretso tayo.
The new Comelec ruling is a big one for all survey firms.
Yes.
So, while we will comply, it is very strict actually. We're still studying it, so we'll leave it at that for the moment. But it is quite...
Professor, so nakuha na kasi hinihintay ko pa yung detalye. It's a pre-election That's a surveys for pre-election lang naman, yung registration nyo, Ano yung ibig sabihin na it's tight requirement?
Intro mo muna si Professor.
The requirement for us to publish will require us to pre-register. It will also require us, which I agree with naman, to state who our subscribers are, which I think is yeah, but there's some criminal aspect, liability for non-compliance. And so that's kind of strict in this day and age, where in other countries, survey companies are left basically free.
Ano yung criminal liability? Ano yun?
Well, ma'am, we're still studying it. Pero dun sa latter part, that is the copy I got. Merong mga sanctions for non-compliance. So, while we're not making any statement yet and we're committing to comply, from that point of view, at least what our other fellows are saying, medyo it's on the strict side. So, and it's the first time it's going to be implemented. And we are with Comelec in making this, helping realize a fair and honest elections, and we're always going to comply with whatever the COMELEC wants. But it's on the strict side, and it will require all survey firms to pre-register within the next few days, no? So they can publish their own survey data. If you're not going to publish, then it doesn't matter. It really is for those who are going to publish. And has implications on media also. So we're still studying it. We'll come out with a statement as soon as we get a position, a consensus on this. But of course, if it's COMELEC, we have no way but to comply. No, we have.
Ang boses po narinig ay boses ang tinig ni Professor Ranjit Rai, ang Pangulo ng OCTA Research na ngayon pa lang namin i-introduce. Pero nakipagkwentuhan tayo.
At topic natin?
It's to be promulgated pa, this, what you call this, COMELEC, new COMELEC pictures. But we study it. We'll come out with a statement, maybe with the others also who may have a different perspective on this.
Yes, sir.
But definitely, if we're talking about fair, honest, and clean elections, we're all for it, definitely. And survey companies have a responsibility talaga to be transparent and accountable, not just in their methodology, in the release of their own data, the data that they produce, but also if there's a need to inform the public of whoever is subscribing, lalo if it's an election-related probe.
Yes, sir. Sir, let me zoom in to the latest OCTA survey on the Dutertes versus the Marcoses. The late January survey shows wala, at least statistically, walang
at the national level, wala talagang pagbabago. It remains the same practically. But what's interesting, although the margin of error, you have to understand that the sub-national level is much higher. It's for the regional, or for the areas, it's plus minus 6%. So it's a bit higher. It's interesting to look at the granular changes over time. And the last time we had the survey of this nature was in the third quarter of 2024.
August.
So,
August. Yeah. That was a long time ago in our political calendar.
That was even before
even we were also first trying to find out why these changes happen at the granular level.
Dami na nangyari since then.
Pero sir, before you go to the granular, yung sabi ko nga, statistically at least, walang pagbabago even though umakyat yung isa ng 3, baba yung isa ng 2. Statistically, walang pagbabago.
Lalo na dahil 6% ang margin of error.
Pero sir,
3% at the national level. So because of the margin of error, we can't say with certainty that a trend or a change happened, because of the margin of error. It's within the margin of error, and therefore it statistically it remains the same. But it's interesting for social scientists like me to look at the granular level, why these changes happen. So basically, in August, the picture was there was a rise, a continuing upward trend for pro-Marcos, the pro-Marcos preference, and a downward trend for the pro-Duterte preference. It seems in this new survey, it's different now. I think the pro-Duterte preference is has stopped declining, and in our view, there was a surge in support for it at the granular level, and it's likely to go up over the next few months. It's possible it could. So yung decline niya nag-stop na po. So yung nag-reverse na yung kanyang trend. Yun lang, I think, one of the big things here.
Na-cover na ba dyan, Professor, yung GAA? Yung controversy over the national budget?
Yeah, I think so. I think this covers all the things, in our view kasi, it's also consistent with what we're seeing in our other probes where, for example, you're looking at hunger data and poverty data. All of that increased in the fourth quarter of 2024. 50% of our families are now self-rating themselves as poor. Yeah. The amount of people who are now saying that they're hungry is much higher now, from 11 in the third quarter to 16%.
That's big.
So all of this together with the controversy about the budget, there seems to be a momentum shift towards, and of course, the pro-Duterte preference was declining because of the Quadcom, the momentum towards the impeachment. But all of that seemed to have been lost in December and January. when the narrative changed, no, and we started to have this discussion about the budget crisis, all of the politicking with regards to resource allocation, and of course this, the hardship that actually happened in the fourth quarter of 2024. Parang nagkaroon ng momentum shift, no, parang nagkaroon ng surge of support in certain areas for the pro-Duterte preference.
Significant ba yung shift, Professor?
Well, one could see it as that, lalo na when you look at, for example, the granular data on Class E, no? You had a 19% a jump in preference for the pro-Duterte. You also had a consolidation, increase, no, in Mindanao. But by and large, no, it's been stable everywhere else except where it matters, no? Kasi the government's trying to do all these initiatives, no? Its dole-outs to touch, at least have impact on Class E. So, all of this put together, it seems like nag-halt na yung decline sa Duterte preference. And there was a slight decline sa pro-Marcos preference, but it's still substantial, no? At 36%. What seems to have been, has not changed at all is the number of people who are independents, no? 26%. Those who are undecided or ambivalent went down a bit, no? And it seems that some of them went to the pro-Duterte side. So yun ang nakikita namin. But it's at the national level, it's relatively the same.
Professor, did I get you right? Sabi mo, you're expecting a continuing improvement for the Dutertes?
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing initially. It may not actually happen if we're going to have this other survey, other probe, the same probe done in March. Maybe we might see some change. Definitely, the decline has reversed as far as the preference for the Duterte side is concerned. They were on decline for almost 2 quarters. So,
Pero yung improvement, what will you attribute it to? I'm asking you as a political scientist naman, your hat as a political scientist.
Yeah, that's what I discussed earlier. Parang, yeah, it seems like it's rooted in, the impact of, the issue of poverty and hunger. It seems to be linked to issues like the budget crisis that, monopolized the heirs in January. So a lot of this, also what we're seeing in other probes, no? When you look at our party list probe, one of the top party lists suddenly in the top 3 is the Duterte Youth. There seems to be some sort of surge, no, of support, and it seems to be in E. There seems to be a consolidation in Mindanao. So yeah, so all of this maybe it probably is driven by the election, the discussion on the impeachment, the continuing, political fallout because of the budget, and the reality that, there are more people who are hungry and who are celebrating themselves as poor. So all of this put together may be providing, some sort of fuel for a rebound, a reversal, probably, a change in the trend. But we're not certain about that. It's just that we're seeing some of this movement, interesting movement at the granular level.
Sir, baliw ko lang kanina kasi statistically walang movement even though tuloy-tuloy yung pagbakbak doon kay VP Sara Duterte. Now kasi as journalists sometimes we look at non-movement as sometimes more significant than movement. Yeah. Parang yung tipong, bakit hindi gumalaw sa kabila ng lahat ng nangyayari? And then sometimes that leads us to other better leads. So isn't that more telling na hindi gumalaw yung mga numbers?
Actually, gumalaw siya dahil hindi lang siya lumampas sa margin of error, pero gumalaw po siya. May plus 3%.
In the opposite direction pa.
So, yeah, gumalaw siya. And tama ka, Ed, no? You can also interpret it that way. It is quite telling, no, that despite all the negative media it seems that they even got momentum. But we have to understand that the whole of January was really focused on the budget crisis, the issue of reallocating certain resources away from education and health. The government lost the narrative and control of the narrative. So that may have contributed.
Pero Prof, may galaw sa E kasi 19 points yung galaw
Yeah,
Di ba galaw yun? That's significant Poorest of the poor. That's the poorest of the poor.
Ginalaw Kaya hindi mo masasabing siya
Hindi gumalaw.
Walang pinanggagalingan at hindi mo masasabing hindi nag-reverse o hindi tatigil yung trend. Mukhang it has stopped yung decline and it's on its way to moving up, no? We don't know that, but it seems like that's where the direction is, no? It's so apparent now, but yeah.
Ano yung 63% self-rated poverty ang tatamaan dyan, gobyerno
Lagi. And the fourth quarter is consistent even with the other survey companies. They're seeing the same thing. Record high self-rated poverty, significant increases in self-rated hunger. So yeah. But the government is trying to do something. It's trying to resolve the issue with the crisis and rice. And I think the hope of everyone is that rice prices will stabilize, will actually go down this month to next month and for the next few months, no? And I think the government's discussion on minimum wage is going, if it is realized, will probably have some positive effect, no? Pero it must be clear na mas marami pa rin tayong mga kababayan na nag-identify sa administration, sa Pro-Marcos, mas konti ho nag-identify sa Pro-Duterte. Yung decline sa Pro-Duterte over the last few quarters, 2 quarters, mukhang na-halt na. Parang may momentum sila ngayon at may surge in certain areas. Mas marami pa rin Pilipino, pag kinombine mo yung ambivalent at saka independent, na naghahanap ng bagong leadership, no? Yung opposition nag-increase rin So, but again, it's very nominal. Yeah.
Yan, pwedeng pumunta yan kay Manny Mugato.
Sir, just for context, this survey was conducted January 20-something, 20 to 25 ata. But anyway, this was before
31, yeah.
This was before the impeachment.
25 to 31, January 25 to 31.
This was before the impeachment of February 5.
After the Iglesia rally.
And this is after the Iglesia rally. And
all the budget, all the
discussions about the budget. Yeah, medyo malaki yung discussion na yan I think government took a hit because of that, and they weren't able to communicate, articulate a response, effective response to it. And I think this together with all the others I discussed probably explains why there was a slight movement, downward movement.
Kaya siguro natanggal si Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
Hindi daw effective. Pero yung follow-up, do you think it can be projected sa elections?
I think so. I think this is an core. I mean, it's already being articulated by
candidates.
That side of the opposition, the Duterte side, whether it's poverty, hunger, or even the budget. It's a big issue, and which is why important yung sinabi ni former Senator Frank Drilon, that some sort of budget reform should happen. The executive has to respond, by reallocating back to education and health. Basically, taking control of the budget, for the year, for this fiscal year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maraming salamat for joining us this afternoon. OCTA Research President Dr. Ranjit Rai. Thank you very much, sir, and hope to see you again.
Salamat, Prof.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for joining Storycon today. Aming pamintuan ang nakatay at
Estudyante daw ako, estudyante.
estudyante blues.
Naka-student look.
At Tito Ral Llama sa naka-principal look. Ako naman ay naka-santo look. Join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.